Hello, friends. I'm no therapist, but I'm your host, Stephanie Goodman. I'm a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and a woman of faith. Often friends ask me how I have a successful marriage while blending families and staying optimistic in life. This podcast features people with real-life stories about success in relationships and triumph over trial. Have you ever wanted to settle the score with someone who had done you wrong? We all have. Kels and I share experiences in our lives where revenge would have been justified, but we chose another path.
See, I grew up in Virginia till I was 10, and so we lived in a farm in a town called Powhatan. Now, Powhatan is east of or west of Richmond, and Richmond was, at the time, I'd say this is the 70s, I'd say, that we were there, 60s, because I was born in 67, and my dad, he was born in D.C., so he was a D.C. guy, and so he lived in D.C., and he was there at the time when the Marriotts were there. Willard Marriott, I think Willard Marriott was his stake president.
Meaning the Marriott hotels that are around here?
That's right, the Marriott hotel owner. That's right, the guy who started Marriott Hotels.
In Washington?
Washington, D.C.
Fascinating.
And so he was his stake president. In fact, I think Willard Marriott paid for his mission, helped him, go on his mission.
Oh, wow.
Because my grandfather died very early after, having the kids, and then he died, probably wasn't around when he left on his mission. And so he, I don't remember when he passed away. I'm bad about that time, but my dad never talked a lot about his dad too often because I know it wasn't always a positive experience. But my dad lived in D.C., and then went to BYU, and then came home, and then moved to Richmond, and then had the kids, and I'm the youngest of 7. So we all went to Huguenot Academy, which was in Powhatan, and living on the farm, and Huguenot Academy was actually a Baptist school, and it went from kindergarten to 12th grade. It's covered the whole gamut, and so all of us were there. All siblings were there. And
I've never experienced anything like that.
Yeah, it was a different experience, and I'm sure there was changes over the years, and now it's called like Blessed Sacrament, I think is what it's called.
Oh, still, interesting.
Huguenot Academy.
I remember how much older my cousins seemed because they were 2 and 3 years older than me, and to have them in the same school with me, that would have been an interesting experience.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's for me. It was just my siblings. I didn't have my cousins like you did, because I know you had cousins galore. Where when you went to school, I had no cousins nearby. That was probably one of the drawbacks of my family, was that we were never near other family ever. At least in my remembrance. I was never near a cousin or a grandmother or a grandparents. They were always so far away. And because they were, building a relationship with them was not a priority.
Right.
And so... You
met them, once a year?
Like maybe every...
they were reunion or something?
Once a year, every couple of years,
or
probably.
A funeral, right?
Yeah, a funeral or something like that. I mean, we did... Mom's side of the family was in California, and Dad's side of the family was all like north of D.C., like in Maryland. So living in Virginia was fascinating, and we went from the country to more in the city in Richmond, and that was the days in which I don't remember much. I don't know if it's because, we had an incident that eventually happened. We had 2 incidences that changed our lives. One was my sister. So I have a sister named Lisa, who is the next one above me. And Lisa died because we lived on a farm and some equipment knocked her out.
This equipment was used for making barbed wire fences.
That's right. It's a barbed wire fence maker, and it hit her, and she was only 4, and so I think she was 3 or 4, and so living out in the country, getting 911 was like a luxury, and so they took her and put her in the back of the station wagon, and one of my brothers held her up, and another brother drove and met a ambulance halfway to help speed that up, but didn't.
Can you imagine having to meet up with the ambulance, driving frantically to meet up with the ambulance?
Try to save your sister's life, that just had to be crazy.
How old was she?
It was either 3 or 4. I know it was no older than 4, but it was because she died, I think, in 1969.
So how many siblings do you have at the time that she died?
I was the youngest of 7, and so she died in 1969, and then years later in 1977, we were at Huguenot Academy, and my brother Scott, who was he had failed a grade, so he was held back and was in the same grade with my other sister Pam. So,
and people were not afraid to hold back.
Yeah, back then, if you failed, you failed. You waited, and so Scott kind of had some learning, disabilities that he had, and
yet he was a genius.
Yeah, so he knew how to build things, and I still have one of his pieces. I should show it, but he built this wooden box that I still have to this day. Yeah, treasure box. So that box is about 45 years old, and I have my Star Wars action figures in it from the day. So I still carry
These
that around.
are some of the reasons that I love this man. He's sentimental and sweet, and I love that he has his brother's box.
Sentimental fool is what I am. So
it's perfect for me.
But we Scott. So basically what happened to Scott was we went to school. In fact, I almost remember it was the day after President's Day, February, and we all got in the bus and we all rode the many miles to school because we had moved far away from Powhatan by this time, but they still picked us up. And we got to school, and then I think it was the first period, and you could hear a boom in all throughout the school, and we were all like, well, what happened? Did something fall, or something exploded or whatever? And then not long after that, all the Goodmans are called to the office, and I walked to the office, and I remember walking, and I found Pam, and then I found Connie, and I can't remember if Bobby was with us. 1977. I think Bobby might have been in college by then. But we were walking to school, and there was no Scott. And it was just sort of like, I wonder what happened. And we later realized that someone had brought a grenade to school. And that's one of those things. This is 1977.
How many of you can relate to a story like that?
Yeah. I mean, it's bound to be.
Brought a grenade to school.
Yeah, today. And basically what happened was a kid in the same class, shop class, with Scott, was innocently, he was a collector of Civil War materials. He loved Civil War and war things, and he would bring things that he would find from war-related, materials to school, and he'd show them off.
I think I would be also fascinated by finding such a thing, especially if I didn't know the danger of it.
Yeah, if he had clothes or if he had guns or whatever, he'd bring it to school.
Bullets.
You wouldn't think of, it being dangerous at the time. And
why was there a grenade available to him?
Well, the grenade was a grenade. This kid lived on a military base, and he found a grenade, and he thought it was a dud. and he was going to take the grenade and make an ashtray out of it. That was his goal.
That was his goal.
So he brought it to shop class to do it. So he started drilling the hole to get the grenade process to make it into an ashtray, and then it had gone off. And then what was ironic was the device that was used to cut the drill machine was in a closet. So it's they converted the closet into like where you drill stuff, and so they put a clasp around the grenade, and as it was protected, it actually protected the guy doing the drilling. So he actually survived, even though he was damaged, he was hurt. He actually survived, and so it acted like a rocket. With it being compressed, and it shot right across the room and right into Scott, right to his face, and it took off some of the side of his face. And
the shrapnel.
Shrapnel, yeah, just did that, and nobody else died. Everybody else survived, but there was damage. There were some people that I think had long-term damage. That was eternal or whatever, But Scott was the only one that actually died.
Here's the interesting thing about this story, and I wasn't there obviously, but the way that it's been told to us is that Scott was nowhere near the events of the grenade being pressed in the shop, that he was clear across the classroom. So how can you not say that that was not meant to happen?
Yeah, it was one of those things where it was kind of a freak thing, and you weren't really sure, why it went that way, but he served his purpose. He had to do what he had to do. So there's obviously an eternal perspective that you have to take on a death like that. Like it served some kind of purpose.
Right.
And I think not until the life hereafter that we would actually know what those purposes are.
So your sweet mother buried 2 of her children.
That's right.
One at 4 and one at 14.
Yep. That's right. So,
how do you not become bitter from an experience like that?
Yeah.
That would be so hard.
And I think like what you would say, Stephanie, I think instead of making that experience bitter, she chose to make it better. And she saw it on an eternal situation. In fact, I think my mom has talked about when she goes to the other side of this life, she would continue to raise her children, and because they were still young when they passed away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we totally all know the logistics of the life hereafter, but I think we do know that there is a certain level of mentality where you stop and then you die, and then you receive whatever it is, that knowledge of eternity, but there's still a learning that you never got while being here on this earth that you would get afterwards. And so I think my mom, as she did pass away, when she, at her funeral about 8 years ago, there was that discussion that went on in her funeral about how she would continue to raise her children now that she lost so early and so young.
Wow.
And also at that funeral, there were people that had that would, in remembrance of my mom, they would talk about that moment that happened. That in 1977, there were more people who were more sad about the death of Scott than the actual mother of the child, and that were kind of scared, and they were kind of freaked out that this happened. And my mom was probably the most calm and cool throughout the death process and the burial and everything. And during those days. Is that
because she was strong?
Yeah, I think she was strong, and I think she had an eternal perspective on things. And I think she also knew that there was a mission that that was being served of some type.
That God's got this. That
Yeah.
there's a bigger reason for it than what we could see.
That's right, a bigger plan of some type,
Wow.
And to finalize this story, I think we went back, and you were with me when we went back to my mom's funeral, and then back in 2012, and we went back, and then we traveled to as all the siblings in Virginia, because that's where we buried my mom. My mom ended up being buried right by the children in Virginia, and we went back to that school, and we went to on a little road trip while we were waiting for our flight. We decided to go over to Huguenot Academy, and what was so ironic is it was during the Christmas break, and so school was not in session. But we all walked into the gym one day and saw them practicing basketball, and there, at the coach that was there with them, my brother's name is Scott Goodman. This guy's name was Scott Goodwin. And I knew the Goodwins. We remembered the Goodwins. The name's, off by a couple of letters.
Right.
And Scott Goodwin was the same age as Scott Goodman. And I remember Betsy Goodwin, who was his mother.
Okay.
And I remember hearing the story that she, who was also part of the school, was kind of scared and freaked out because she heard Scott Goodman was injured and killed. Scott Goodman was killed.
Oh.
At this explosion, and she was like, "Are you sure that's not Goodwin?"
Oh yeah, I would do the same.
Yeah, and that was kind of a scary moment for them, and also a coming to Jesus, I guess, moment for them as a family. Mm-hmm. And Scott Goodwin then, after we met him and talked to him, he took us to the room where it happened. He actually went to the room where the explosion and the death happened, and so we all kind of went in, and it's now, instead of being shop class, it's a theater class. So it's still many years later, 30-some years later.
The classroom is still there.
Classroom is still there, and the hole is still there.
Wow.
The damage hole was still there. They just painted over it. They painted like a little rainbow around it or something. They just did something funny and creative around it. And we walked it through. We were able to sit there and walk through where it all happened and what happened, and it was fascinating to get that kind of tour, from Scott Goodman.
And to realize that it really did happen.
Yeah.
How interesting is it that they have not repaired that hole?
Yeah.
That they've left it open. Do you think that they talk about that? Like it's a talking point?
I think it is. It seems like it. I remember we moved back before you and I met, I moved back to Virginia for a couple of years, just for a couple of years. And this was in 2003. And when I became friends with Betsy Goodwin, she would tell me, she would remind me that she knew that was still a topic. And when I went to get my car insurance at the local place there in Powhatan, the lady who did my car insurance reminded me that she wrote the insurance stuff when it happened. So she knew the Goodman story of Scott Goodwin. So she remembered that time.
That'd be fascinating to get that report.
Yeah. So, but the one thing to finalize this, and here I am finalizing the final of the story, was the fact that while there was a discussion of money from the government and that there wasn't, this is at a time in which my parents could have pitched a fit.
Sure.
They could have in today's world.
It would be expected, wouldn't it?
They could have had a press conference. They could have, done all kind. Now they did sue the government, That I know, but it was a very quiet, very small, humble thing. They knew not a lot was going to come out of it, and there was a lot of forgiving, and there was a lot of letting go, and there was a lot of moving on.
I mean, it was an accident.
It was an accident, and we all knew it was. That's the point. Is it was an accident. It was not something that was meant to, drag on. Wow. And we continued to go to that school. And I bet if we stayed in the town, we probably would have continued to go to that school.
Yeah.
Had we not moved to Texas.
Okay.
We still loved them. And even my parents moved back in 97 to Powhatan and still loved it and found their friends there. And that discussion was just one of those things that it just happened. It was nothing you could do about it. And it's a matter of what you take from it rather than, parade it around as we didn't walk around with Scott's face on a shirt, and, we didn't, do things that would make it sound like we were bitter.
Against the government.
Yeah, it was an accident.
Yeah.
We all knew it, and we, forgave the people that did it, and we moved on with our lives.
Wow. I have so much respect for your mom and your dad in that circumstance of choosing to embrace the Lord's teachings of comfort and eternal life, and also that they chose to forgive, to recognize that it was an accident, that there was purpose to it, but that they didn't have to carry animosity. How different your life would have been had your parents chosen to hold on to that animosity, especially because you were the youngest. You would have been raised very differently, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I do sit and I think when I see other families go through things that are terrible and tragic, I sit and I go, man, can you just, I know it's bad, I know it's terrible, and I know your family is grieving, but you've got to let that go. You've got to learn to just realize that while you learn from it, but that's all you can do with it. That is all you can do with it, is you can learn from it. No amount of money is going to fix anything, and so don't go after it in the first place.
That's so hard.
Yeah, it's very hard.
And humbling.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, if I remember right, we did get some money. We did get some money from it, and Jimmy Carter called our house and apologized. So, it's what you do. But today's standards of revenge and retribution, and I'm going to hold a press conference and all this nonsense,
right? Yeah,
does not help and make it better. It's not going to make it any better.
Revenge is it doesn't repair what happened.
Yeah,
it really doesn't. So I am very passionate about stories of triumph over trial, right? Which is why I love the superheroes concept, because I believe that they emulate that strength of choosing to take this trial that's coming their way and to triumph over it. And I believe that we all have those skills in our lives. That's why we are drawn to those kind of stories. We all experience trial. That's how we grow. That's how we become who we are. But we can choose to be triumphant, or we can choose to be, let's say this, we can choose to be a victim, or we can be victorious. That is a choice.
That's good. Yeah, I really like that word exchange. Yeah, you can be a victim or you can be victorious.
Mm-hmm.
And because at the end of the day, much of that doesn't matter. And you've got to have some kind of heart if revenge becomes always part of your dialogue, you also have to have some kind of, if you are one that took revenge and then you did something wrong and somebody wanted to take revenge on you, you're bound to have the same kind of, I don't know, some kind of trait. I'm no psychologist, but, or psychiatrist or
no
whatever.
Therapist.
I'm no therapist, but, there's bound to be something, I think in the scriptures, in the Mormon scriptures, in the Book of Mormon, there's a phrase called past feeling. And, we'll talk about that numerous times, but past feeling is, what that basically means is, past feeling is if you've sinned enough to where you don't feel your sin. At the beginning, you do something wrong and there's that feeling you get of, maybe I've hurt this person. Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Maybe I should be honest.
Maybe I should be honest. Maybe I should be, whatever
maybe I should repent, right?
Maybe I should repent.
Yeah.
And then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it so much to where your senses become numb and you don't feel anymore. Then you become past feeling.
Oh.
And so there must be a numbness to somebody who wants revenge, and you can see it when they want revenge in everything, in all kinds of stuff. They go to McDonald's and they get their meal and they drive away and they go, oh my goodness, they got the wrong drink. And they think that person hates them, or something's wrong with McDonald's, or something, there's always something wrong,
it's a blanket statement,
it's a
right?
blanket kind of challenge that you're not helping the situation by being a little brat. I'm sorry,
Let's put that out there.
That's just putting it like it is.
You're throwing a fit.
You're throwing a fit over
like a
your
toddler
drink.
In the grocery store.
Yeah, and
not getting what you want.
You think that everybody is just after you, and it's probably called a mistake, and you get over it, or a overlook-see, or a teacher that just wants to get you and hates you, and so they're gonna fail you. Well, nobody fails you. You fail yourself.
Ooh. Stop right there.
Sorry, that opens a whole nother
Nobody
Pandora's
fails you.
Box.
You fail yourself.
Yeah.
And we can actually take this into marriage and relationships and family. Nobody fails you. But you fail yourself.
I would be a terrible therapist because I would be telling everybody what's wrong with them instead of making them feel good. I'm awful. I know that, but I would say, some days you just have to accept the fact that you're wrong. Some days you have to accept the fact that maybe what you're doing.
And that wrong pie is so bitter.
It is awful. It's terrible. I mean, I've eaten a lot of that pie, that crow that just... I can't believe I'm doing it this way, and I know, blah, 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 but that has to be a discussion that I think as we get into other discussions, when we get into marriage and we get into family, I think that will be a theme that will continue. Those two themes that come together of accepting the fact that maybe, just maybe, you're wrong, and learning to take past feeling and how to strip past feeling to become more sensitive again. How can you become more sensitive to the person that you have wronged, so that you can correct those things and feel better, so that your past feeling is no longer past.
Yes.
And
right, and that you don't see a way of choosing offense.
Yeah. That's right, not choosing offense. And that's kind of one of the things that we talk a lot about when we have our deep conversations about life and raising kids and marriage and business, and because everything comes down to relationship. Everything comes down to how you treat somebody. And Steph and I think that is probably one key of our success of our marriage, is accepting the fact that Kels doesn't know what the crap he's doing half the time, and that Steph is awesome. And so sometimes I just like, ooh. No. Anyway, but just accepting wrong things and making them right. That's
right.
That's
and
all
I would
it is.
say, I want to add to that also that when you seek to see things from the other person's point of view, you'll really find, are they really trying to offend me? Are they really trying to use their words to hurt me? Or maybe I'm a little sensitive right now.
Yeah.
And I'm making it up for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So
If you've enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe, share, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram. Please comment, because I would love to hear about what you think and what you want to see in the future. I'm no therapist, but I am your host, Stephanie Goodman.